It's only Wednesday, but it's already been a rough patch for a few key figures in Massachusetts politics, including former Boston Mayor, now Labor Secretary Marty Walsh, who's been drawn into the controversy over the city's police chief for a day, Dennis White, over what he knew and when about past allegations of domestic assault against him. White, who's appealing his firing by acting Mayor Kim Janey, now says he told Walsh personally about a restraining order from his ex-wife. Then there's Governor Charlie Baker, who's been facing similar questions about Bennett Walsh. Walsh was the ex-superintendent of the Holyoke Soldiers' Home, who's now facing criminal charges over the 76 veterans who died of COVID at the home last spring. Now some state lawmakers are calling on the governor to testify on Beacon Hill. And finally, there's the state Republican Party, which is surely not the party of the very popular Republican governor, but rather the very unpopular, at least in Massachusetts, President Trump. And now, many in the Massachusetts GOP are calling on a member of their state committee, Debbie Martell, to resign over anti-gay comments she made about Republican congressional candidate Jeffrey Sosa Paquette, writing in an email that she was, quote, sickened to learn he's married to a man and has adopted kids. Joining me to discuss all of this are Jennifer Nassour, former chair of the Massachusetts Republican Party, don't blame her, now the founder and president of something called the Pocketbook Project, and Michael Curry is the president and CEO of the Massachusetts League of Community Health Centers and chair of the National NAACP Advocacy and Policy Committee. Michael, Jennifer, good to see you both. Thanks for being here.
Good to be back on with you.
Nice to be here.
Jennifer, let me start with you. Obviously, Marty Walsh says he knew nothing about this. One of his police commissioners, Bill Evans, says Walsh knew nothing about this. But as you know, there is sworn affidavits from Willie Gross, former police commissioner, also under Marty Walsh, saying there's no way he didn't know about this. And now we have a video affidavit sworn again from Dennis White himself saying he had repeated conversations with the mayor at the time, Marty Walsh, about the restraining order that was taken out against him, he says, inappropriately. What does this do to Walsh's reputation? And I guess more importantly, what does it do for his job security in the Biden administration?
Well, I mean, I think there are two things at play here, right? And I think it's a case of he said. And so, yes, I do understand that these are sworn affidavits, and you hope that people are recalling things accurately. But, you know, I also think that there's more of a PR campaign going on here, and that he does not want to lose his job. And so he's looking for the job security. However, if these conversations actually did take place, then I think, former Mayor Walsh's position in the Biden administration is definitely going to be in peril, because I can't see how, the new president of the United States would want to keep on someone who would have this baggage right behind him.
You know, Jennifer said, Michael, this he said, but to paraphrase what Rachel Rollins, the Suffolk DA, said on our radio show the other day, it's not quite that, because two of the he saids, Willie Gross and Dennis White, are sworn affidavits as opposed to unsworn comments from Bill Evans and Marty Walsh. Are they to be more believed in this balancing act here?
Yeah, I mean, I think to Jennifer's point, I do believe that it's a degree of he said, even with the sworn affidavits. I am friends with Commissioner Gross, former Commissioner Gross. I know Dennis White. My former mentor, Lenny Alkins, and Dennis White are good friends. He swears by Dennis White as a solid leader. But I'm also friends with Mayor Walsh, right? So I think you're in a situation where people are recalling different facts about what they knew and what transpired in that process of appointing him commissioner. What it really comes down to, Jim, is you're still accountable. You're still accountable for the people you hire and their actions and vetting them properly. And I think that's where the failure happened here. The only thing I would say to that, though, is we've historically in the city always failed to properly vet candidates. That is not new in the Boston Police Department. And it shouldn't be tagged with a Black candidate who is up for that position. Because quite frankly, there have been many white male officers with just as much baggage as we find in this case.
You know, it's interesting you say that. I'm sure, Michael, you've heard the comment that was made by Dennis White during the hearing today. Let me read it to you. Let's be clear. I'm a black man who has been accused falsely of crimes. I've not yet been given a fair trial. I'm on the brink of being convicted or terminated, which is the equivalent here. As you know, that is a pattern that has been repeated in this country for centuries. I believe it will be bad for Boston if that pattern is repeated here with me. Is this in any way about race? I mean, it is apparently according to Dennis White, but is it?
So for someone who was president of the Boston NAACP for 6 years, I can tell you that there's a disparity in how city government, but particularly the Boston Police Department, deals with discipline. I've had that conversation with former Commissioner Evans. I've had that conversation with Commissioner Davis before him, with Commissioner Gross. There is a challenge where, you know, entrenched white males in the Boston Police Department have had a really open season on bad behavior and could maintain their jobs. But we will talk, and you could pull in black officers who will tell you, if you did 2% of that, you would get fired if you're a black officer.
Yeah, but Michael, if I can
can
interrupt you, there has been conclusive research to show, as per your comment, that when it comes to rank and file officers, black officers are disciplined more and rewarded less. The question I'm asking you is the termination of Dennis White in any way about the color of his skin in your estimation?
I think it's about due process, right? I can't make an accusation, Jim, and say you did something without the process playing out. And I think Officer White has a point there that this can't be the scarlet letter that you say someone did something and all of a sudden they're, you know, flogged or lynched as a result of that. He is making a valid argument. As an African-American, he should have the right as a person, as an officer, he should have the right to a due process and to a process that should play out to figure out whether he should not have the position.
Jennifer, let's move to a good friend of Marty Walsh, Governor Baker, a member of your party. I want to read you an excerpt from the Spotlight series on the whole nightmare at the Holyoke Soldiers Home. It ran about a week ago. Baker said Walsh, meaning Bennett Walsh, who was the superintendent, had been appointed by the Soldiers Home Board of Trustees, which, quote, really wanted Bennett Walsh to have that job. I can tell you that the first time I ever met him or talked to him was when we swore him in. That wasn't true, writes the Globe. Baker interviewed Walsh before naming him superintendent in 2016. Despite Walsh's lack of healthcare management experience, an administration spokesman recently confirmed. There's no question, reading this report, this Walsh was wildly underqualified for a really important job. When asked the other day about this portion of the Spotlight report, Charlie Baker's response was, I forgot. It was a brief conversation, meaning a 30-minute meeting. Does that cut it? Is that basically cover Baker on this issue of misrepresentation, whether it was conscious or otherwise, about his dealings with Walsh before the hiring?
No, I don't think it does. However, I mean, I guess, you know, this is kind of the same situation that's going on in the city, which is that there are so many layers of bureaucracy in state government and city government that, number one, I think it's really difficult to expect our leaders of the city and of the state to remember every single person that they met with. I think also there's so many other people that are in this vetting process. It's not the governor, it's not the mayor who's doing the vetting. It's the people way below them. So by the time the person gets up the rank, it has their expectation is all the homework has been done, all the due diligence has been done. And so by the time that Bennett Walsh, got up to the governor's office, he had a 30-minute meeting with him. Of course, he can't remember what happened 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, we've been through since then, we've been through snowstorms and COVID and businesses shutting. I mean, and this is a tragedy, and it's not something to look lightly at all. 76 people who gave their lives and gave their service to the country is totally not to be overshadowed by this at all. But I'm saying that is in the chain of bureaucracy, someone else down the line should have been doing their homework. And there are many someones that should have been doing their homework. And the governor just had a short period of time with this person.
Well, speaking of down the line,
he should go talk to the legislature, and he said he will.
Speaking of down the line, also in this series, Michael Curry, it's made pretty clear that even though the former Secretary of Veterans Affairs took the fall for this, that the direct supervision on much of the time that Walsh was there was not by that secretary, but by the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Mary Lou Sudders. And it seems to me that the investigator went out of his way to ignore certain facts, his name is Pearlstein, to insulate her. Should Charlie Baker, who one of his calling cards is his ability to manage extraordinarily well from his Harvard Pilgrim Health days to being governor, should he be held responsible for the behavior of Secretary Sudders here?
Yeah, ultimately, I think as any of us who take public office, right? And I know, Jim, you've been in this space before. You take a position, you become an elected official, and you have a responsibility that comes with that. You'll make a lot of great decisions, and you will absolutely hire some people that are bad choices, right? We all do it as an employer. We all had that experience. But to be accountable for it is what matters, right? Is to say that this was a bad hire, that this was mishandled. Even the DPH scandal a few years ago reminds me of that, right? Being able to just say, hey, it was a mistake. We should have handled it. We should have had more oversight, more accountability. I know Secretary Sudders, and I'll quite frankly tell you in my years of dealing with her, she's done a tremendous job on the public health side. But she has to be accountable, as we all do, for whatever the failures are. And this may be one of those that she has to be account for. That comes with these leadership roles.
I want to switch to the party that you used to run for the remaining few minutes. As I said early on, a committee woman whose resignation has now been called for by people from the governor on down, said she was sickened when she heard that a candidate for Congress, a Republican, a gay man, was not only married but had adopted children. That man, Jeffrey Souza Paquette, reached out to the chair of the state Republican Party, Lyons. Here's what Souza Paquette said about that conversation.
His answer to me was he wasn't going to get involved in inter-party politics. And I said, inter-party politics? You're the chairman of the Mass GOP. Are you not supposed to be running the party?
The chair of the GOP, for those who don't know in this state, is also someone who says the election was stolen from Donald Trump. As you know, Lyons has refused to comment. It seems to me that doing crickets on a situation like this essentially removes your right to hold the job as party chair. Am I overreacting to this or no, Jennifer?
You're totally right. I mean, I think that all that Jim Lyons is doing at this point is making the Mass GOP obsolete. No one can take it seriously. I mean, I want to reach out to this candidate because I give him a lot of credit for going out there. If I was chair, I would have kicked this state committee woman off. I would have gone out there. I mean, you can't kick them off, but you can reprimand them and you can have a conversation. This behavior is completely not appropriate. It's only appropriate if what you're trying to do is shrink the tent. And I'm sorry, but right now in Massachusetts, 10% of registered voters are actually Republicans, and that number continues to shrink. And so if Jim Lyons wants the smallest party in the country, he should keep going down this path with committee members that want to hold on to a claim that isn't true, that want to take people out of the party that aren't purists. I mean, they would like to get rid of Governor Baker. They would like to make sure that, everyone is married to a man or a woman, that kids are only with the people who they think they should be with. I mean, we can go down the line, but as a single mother raising my kids, I wouldn't fit in what the Mass GOP's beliefs are currently. And so if we're going to kick out people like myself and people who have been around for a long time because they don't like the way that we conduct our personal life, then they should just really pack up their bags and go home. But at this point, I have nothing else to say about Jim Lyons and his conduct as chair. He really needs to own up to this. He needs to apologize to this candidate, and he needs to reprimand that state committee woman.
Unfortunately, I only have 15 seconds for you. Well, amen. Is that a one-word response? That's good enough for me. We'll go.
Michael Jennifer's absolutely right. I'd say crazy has moved into the Republican Party, both here and across the country. I'm just glad that Jennifer doesn't live in that house. So.
Jennifer Nassour, good to see you. It's been a long time. Michael Curry, great to see you as well. Thanks, both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.